You're listening to the Player Issue Podcast. Here's your host, Aaron Warwick.
G'day everybody and welcome to episode 15 of the Player Issue Podcast. Episode 15, yep, I can't believe we've made it this far. Here we are. I know I've said this multiple times and I say it almost every week, but I just can't believe we've come this far and having a great time doing it. I'm glad you're all thoroughly enjoying listening to it as well. I'm getting plenty of great feedback and I really appreciate it every single time you guys let me know that you're enjoying the show. So please continue to do so and I'll continue to bring out as much content as I can and get on the best guests that I can every single time. In saying that, we've had another fantastic guest on this week. I'm very sorry again that it has been 4 weeks since the last interview or the last episode. We do have a good reason for that. We did actually record an interview 3 or 4 days after the last episode was released. The gentleman actually flew over from Brisbane and did it in studio, which was absolutely tremendous. And I'll be completely honest, I wasn't sure how much I could actually get out of that interview, purely because this gentleman actually messaged me on the page after obviously listening to the show and saying that he would like to come on and share his story. And obviously I didn't have any real research on him because I wasn't too sure, and he was a bit of a background collector. So yeah, coming into the interview, I just wasn't too sure about how long the interview would actually go for and how much content I can actually get out of it. Turned out to be fantastic, and we talked for about an hour and 35 minutes. And yeah, I was really surprised at how great the interview actually was. It was very free-flowing. It's for some reason very hard to say that when you have a massive ulcer on your lip. But anyway, yeah, it was a great interview. I really enjoyed it. And unfortunately, when he left and I went back to edit the interview, I noticed that the interview was completely trashed and was completely ruined. So I was devastated about that. It was clipping throughout the entire thing, so there was absolutely no way that it could be salvaged. So really upsetting. And we are organising to try and get that redone again. It may take a Skype interview, I think, next time, unless he can get over again for future. But we'll be looking definitely to do that again because I really enjoyed my chat with him. And he had some great stuff to tell all you guys. So I think you'll love that when we finally get that one out again. So in the meantime, we were also organising for the interview, which has actually come up today. We did have a couple of attempts at trying to get it done previously, but scheduling conflicts just didn't quite work out, and we certainly wanted to do it in studio. So it's always best when you can come in studio and do it in here because the sound quality is much better. We did get off to a rocky start, unfortunately, because of my Audacity program, which is my recording program to do these shows. It just didn't want to record, and it was doing the same thing that it did with my previous interview. So it was just clipping throughout the whole thing, and no one wants to hear that. So we had to use a backup program, which luckily came to the party, and it did work. So thankfully, that hour and 46 conversation that we did have yesterday didn't go to waste. So without further ado, we're going to get straight into it today, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff that I picked up on eBay and things like that, and also the Bushfire Appeal game in the close straight after the interview. But today's interview, I'll let you know exactly who he is and what he does before the show. So the interview today is with Sean Cowan. I know a lot of you people would have heard about him previously, and you know that he is an absolute gun when it comes to knowledge about jumpers and just general things in the world of WAFL, and of course any West Coast Eagles football jumpers, and even other clubs as well. But if you have any WAFL questions, so West Australian Football League, any questions from him about that, he is the man to go to. He is a journalist and he does know his stuff, so he's helped me out a lot of times, and he's a big West Coast Eagles fan. We won't hold that against him. But no, I absolutely loved having him on. He was fantastic to talk to. I'm sure you guys are absolutely going to love it as well. So without further ado, here is our interview with Sean Cowan. Alrighty, Sean, how are you, man?
Very well, thanks.
Alright, so I'll admit we've just had a fair struggle trying to get this going. My recording program has let me down, but luckily Spreaker offers another option. So we're giving this one a crack today. Hopefully it doesn't let us down and we're able to get this done.
Fingers crossed, mate. It's a long drive out to the south side here, so I can only do it once a month.
How long did it take you?
40 minutes or something.
That's not too bad.
Not too bad.
Not too bad at all. I do 50 minutes to work every day.
It's not Sydney times for driving. It's all right.
True that. Alright, so I've already let everyone know in the open exactly who you follow, so no surprises here that you are a West Coast fan.
Yep.
I think a lot of people would probably know that when they've seen you around the traps anyway.
I suspect so.
It's a fair chance that a lot of people don't actually know what your collection entails as far as what you actually collect, not just jumper-wise, but there's a lot of other stuff. So we're going to do things a little bit backwards today. We're not actually going to start with jumpers. We're going to start with the stuff that you collect other than football jumpers, which is usually something I bring up at the end. But as it's quite a large part of your collection, let's start from the beginning, I believe. We're in 1985-ish?
Yeah, that's right. Yep, 85. Went to my first WAFL game when WAFL was the competition, which a lot of people don't have any memory of that being the case these days. They were brought up with AFL, and sat with my grandparents and watched Subiaco smash West Perth, which was my team. And they gave me the football budget to shut me up, which is for you Victorians the WAFL equivalent of the football record. Mm-hmm. And I sat there and read that, and have collected them ever since. So that's what really started me and my collecting bug, and particularly the footy collecting bug. So I started with programs. Yep. From there it spread, and I kept everything I could get my hands on, which isn't a lot when you're a kid, because you're relying on someone to give you stuff, or your grandparents to buy you something. And I remember them when the Eagles started in 87, going to the Royal Show, and they bought me a flag, an Eagles flag, and so I had bits and pieces, and I always kept the footy budget. And then obviously got a bit more serious about it around 2007, I guess. I started sort of being a bit more organised, and I'd tried before a couple of times, but career or things were always sort of at the forefront. And then about 2007 I started to get really organised, and by 2011 I'd kind of started building a bit of a brand, I guess. So I actually write for the footy budget, and have done every week since 2011. So again, for the Victorians out there, Rick Milne's column was in the footy record for a long time, so I do WAFL collectables in the footy budget.
Yeah, right.
And sort of, I suppose, became the specialist in WAFL memorabilia. Mm-hmm. And of course, naturally that grew into jumpers. So I collect everything WAFL, and I mean everything. Right? So cards and jumpers and all those little pieces of, I guess you call them pieces of crap, right? They brand with AFL club logos that you'd find in your club shop now or in the AFL shop. Yeah. There wasn't so much of that around, but there were bits and pieces, and I grab all of that from the WAFL's heyday. So I got a website that lists off everything and what I'm looking for, and that spread eventually into jumpers, and I suppose I just liked having a few, and then it became a bit more interesting, and many listeners will know my brother also collects gear, because you'll see that we're actually almost identical twins, but 6 years apart. And
I can confirm that you are not the same person as well.
That's right. People did think we were the same person. Yeah. I don't know, maybe trying to pretend to push the price up or down, or we are different people. And he was really into jumpers, like West Coast jumpers, state jumpers, and naturally for me, I was into WAFL jumpers, but also state jumpers, and eventually sort of got a bit more serious about West Coast jumpers. Mm-hmm. Still not as serious as him though.
Before we get onto the jumpers, because there is a lot to cover, I reckon, we'll go back to your little knick-knacky stuff that you have. So. I don't know if a lot of other people saw, but when I put up the page, the Player Issue Podcast page originally, I think it was one of the first posts I did where I asked people when they had any sort of news or radio appearances, anything like that, and you put up a video, very interesting video. It was about 8 or 9 minute video of your collection, and I believe that was during a halftime of a WAFL game.
Yeah, so halftime at the WAFL it's a little kind of newsy feature segment that was done by the ABC here.
Yeah, and so it had a whole lot of interesting stuff on it, and I could see what you mean by a lot of the, I don't want to say crap, because it's a lot of interesting stuff, but there's some really interesting stuff. What is probably the most interesting thing you have in your collection, or probably the most out there thing that a lot of people wouldn't even think existed? I'm thinking something like peso collections, or the little pogs or something like that.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I mean, I got that much stuff for the WAFL. Like, I mean, I've got this like. First thing that pops to mind is from 1907, and I've got this kid has, or someone who can draw a bit, has done some hand drawings, coloured drawings of West Perth Football Club players, and has had the sheet autographed by the whole 1907 West Perth Football Club team.
1907?
07, yeah. Wow. So it's like, it's pretty cool sort of piece. But, then you got... you see them online, you see these little bobblehead dolls that they made in the 60s for the VFL clubs, the WAFL clubs and the Sandford clubs. So, I got all those. I got, little radios. I got, it's just so much. It's almost like I can't pick a particular one item that comes to mind before any others. And I suppose that's what caused me to do a website, was so that I could, one, list this stuff off and show people what's out there, and two, it's actually a live list of what I'm looking for, so that when I'm out somewhere I see something, I go, did I have that one? I can go on there and I've actually crossed through it or not on the site. So,
I find that's one reason why I keep my pages all going, is because it is a live catalogue, not just for everyone else but for myself as well. It's so I actually know what I have. I mean, I'm pretty good at, because I'll take a photo as soon as I get anything in. As soon as I got it, I'll take a photo immediately, and that seems to stick in my mind as to what I have from there. But obviously then I have the pages to back up, so I've got a visual reminder and things like that. But yeah, you're right. Web pages and things like that, it's just a really good way of live cataloguing for yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I found that's the best way. I do take photos, but I'm not as disciplined as you. So when something new comes in, I often will put it away and then think, I didn't photograph that. And some things, through necessity, storage space largely, aren't going to be that accessible. To get the photo when I want to. It's a bit of a pain in the ass to dig it out, and so I find the list is the first thing I do when I get something, is I cross it off the list.
Okay.
And then sometimes, or most of the time, I'll take a photo, but often the only photo I've got is from the seller who sent me a photo of it in the first place. And that's the photo I've got, and I need to get better at organising photos of stuff. Yeah,
okay. Actually, on photos, you mentioned to me, you actually sent me a really good email, which I actually thought was one of your columns for a minute there. It's really well worded and well set out for me, just for a little bit of research purposes. But you mentioned that you have probably the second largest photo collection for, is it just the WAFL?
For WA Footy. I would say, yeah, because the big newspaper over here is the West Australian. They bought the Sunday Times, so that was the other big newspaper. So they would have a bigger collection than me. But I've inherited some photo collections over the years. There was a football newspaper in WA that existed from 79 to 96 called Westside Football.
Okay.
The equivalent of Inside Footy in Victoria or Football Times in South Australia. And I actually got their whole archive a couple of years ago, and it was in seriously bad state, no order. And another historian and I have sat and probably spent I'd say probably something like 38-hour days each together, sorting it into player folders. And that's been an incredibly useful resource for photo matching of jumpers. But also I have a large digital collection as well of probably something like another 20,000 photos digitally, which is great, for photo matching old jumpers, but especially, even woolen West Coast jumpers. It's been really handy.
Yeah, okay.
And also, not just photo matching a particular jumper, but also material type questions. So what material did they use? Where was this logo? Where was the patch? Was the patch round that year or oval, or was it, what sort of colours were they? Did they use a slightly different colour, or did they have a trademark TM on it or an R, and those sorts of questions are really important when you're trying to identify what year a jumper is, or who wore it, or those sorts of things. I found that photo collection to be really handy in terms of doing provenance work. And sometimes sadly that's actually bought a couple of things, not for me but for other people undone, who had things that they thought were something and have come looking for some advice and found that it's not that at all. I'll give you one. There was a bloke recently, I'm sure a lot of the listeners out there saw that Lesky was promoting the sale of Polly Farmer's 1956 East Perth jumper, which they said was match worn in the grand final that East Perth won in 56, which would make it a really significant jumper because that was Polly's first grand final victory as a player. But it didn't look right to me. It looked a little bit too modern. But two, in those days, the number was actually literally cut out of a bit of fabric by a bloke, and so they're all really unique. And the number didn't match. And it was really obvious it didn't match. And I did a bit of work with the owner, and we went through, and he was really disappointed because he bought it for his super plan. And it turned out that it wasn't actually a Polly Farmer jumper. It was probably, I think we dated it to about 1968, and Polly was playing for another club. He was playing for West Perth then. So those sorts of photos are just so valuable in terms of identifying stuff.
Looking that far back as well, it can't be easy to find photos. So having something like that in your own collection and catalogue would be hugely beneficial.
And that's probably my interest too is in wool jumpers, right? So we're talking, you're not seeing much pre-war, but post-war right the way through to sort of the 90s, where you've got those wool jumpers, and to have that resource there to be able to actually specifically identify jumpers and what was worn on a day and prove or disprove this was worn in a grand final, this was worn in that state game is really important in terms of the provenance for your own collection, but also in not paying for something that isn't what it's claimed to be. And so often as well, a jumper is offered with, this is a so-and-so's match-worn whatever jumper. And, it's really difficult in the modern era with the printed jumper and unless there's a mark or a stain or something on it, you're relying on, possibly a COA or a letter from the owner, if it was a player, saying, I wore this in that game. But there's still no guarantees.
No.
Whereas in the older stuff that's always has something unique about the way it's sewn together, or because it's all done, very uniquely each piece. You can almost always confirm or rule it out, basically. So it's really important, and some of the money being paid for those things is pretty big. So you want to be sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But mind you, finding stuff pre-90s, even pre-90s, to match just with photos that you can get off Google and things like that, it's not easy at all.
Yeah, that's right. And so this is great for me. So West Side football, especially for West Coast stuff, West Side football was covering football right through to 96, and the number of photos I've got of players, especially that sort of West Coast Premiership period and through to the start in 87. It's really handy to be able to match. And I recently found a photo of John Worsfold in a training jumper in 87, which I was able to give to Hayden Ferguson because he has that jumper. And he'd never seen a photo of Worsfold in that jumper. And it was the 80s. Things were reasonably professional in the 80s, but you could literally match that jumper up by a couple of unique spots on it. So,
and that's something you wouldn't find on the net. That's just something that someone's taken a photo and it's in a book or a magazine somewhere. And
that's it. And in fact, it wouldn't even be in a book or a magazine. So Westside sent a photographer down to training pre-season 87, get a headshot of every player. So there's John Worsfold smiling away in his training jumper. Numbers are there, and you can match the numbers up because of how they're positioned against each other.
Yeah, that's crazy. So before we get to jumpers, again, this is a jumper
I kept taking you jumpers, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right. No. So being a jumper podcast, obviously we'll get to it, but I've just got so many questions still to ask you about your WAFL stuff. And
go ahead.
I think a lot of people will actually be very interested about it. So I know I definitely need to cover it because everyone does ask me quite a lot to cover it with you, so I can't skip over it.
Fair enough.
I do want to ask you a question, my own personal thing, however, is you mentioned about your football budgets.
Yep.
Question I do have is, when you were a kid and you had them, did you write all the scores in the book?
No.
You didn't?
Never wrote in the book.
Not once?
Not once. I don't know. I must have had some sort of OCD or something. I never wrote in the book. And for the first 3 or 4 years, I took every budget I owned to school every day.
Why?
So I could read them at lunchtime. or in class, probably more likely. But I remember, and the records once the Eagles came in. I remember in '88 getting in trouble because I was reading a record in class, an '87 record with Chris Lewis on the front.
Okay.
I was sitting there in class reading that inside the book,
Yeah.
as you do. But I never marked them, but I did damage them. Obviously, taking them to school in your bag every day, not a great idea for a collector.
Yeah, so you're a bit of a different kid to what I was. I know when I was a kid, I would watch the games, obviously just on TV, but I'd sit there watching games and I would have a piece of paper or a book or whatever, and I would write every stat as the game went on. I would just write every single stat down, and by the end of it, I'd have 3-4 pages full of all these stats.
Wow.
I wanted to be a statistician, I believe, when I was a kid. I don't know anymore, but
okay.
Yeah, I just absolutely love stats, so I was always one writing it down and writing in the footy magazines, all the budgets. So
well, that's different.
Yeah.
Here I was thinking I was the nerd. You were taking the stats down, for Christ's sake.
I don't know. I just love stats. Love numbers. I don't know why, because I hate maths. But yeah, I love stats.
Okay. You're not alone. Like some of the really well known footy journos around WA started off in a similar manner. One, a guy named Ken Casellas, who was the West Australian's chief cricket writer for about 30 years, and now a board member at Claremont. And he started as a teenager, just going to Claremont games, taking down stats, and ended up doing stats for the WAFL on ABC TV. And so you're not alone, mate. You're in good company.
Unfortunately, everything's digitised now, so it ruins it for us.
Champion data.
That's it. Yeah. Also, back on footy budgets. Mm-hmm. I think you have a pretty extensive collection. Yep. Not just footy budgets, but also footy records. Do you want to share with us how extensive that actually gets?
Sure. So, we'll start with the budget, because that's the one that's dearest to my heart.
Yep.
So, the budget started in 1921 as the WA footballer, and changed to the football budget in 1936. So back to 1936, there's 2,500 or something different to collect, and I'm missing 40.
That is mental.
Ish. And then 21 to 35, not so good. There's about I might get these numbers wrong, but I think there's about 500 or just shy. No, 400, and I think I've got 100. So they're pretty tough to find once you're getting to that 1920s. Yeah, maybe I've got 150, but in that sort of range, and they show up painstakingly one at a time. Maybe 6 months to a year apart. So if I live another 400 years, I might finally finish that. Footy record. Mm-hmm. So I have every Eagles record. Yep. Back to the first game, 87. That took a while, especially some of those games played against. I remember the games against the Bears in Queensland being extraordinarily difficult to find. Crowd of 5,000 in Queensland, so that no records found their way to collectible shops in Melbourne. They were sat in someone's shed in Brisbane. Yeah. I'm missing. There's one that I probably need to finish that collection and be able to go. I'm done with it, and that's a Panasonic Cup game, so it's not really a record. So pre-season game. Unfortunately, it's the first pre-season game the Eagles played against Footscray in March of '87. So that's the one official program I'm missing, and then you never know what exists and doesn't exist for pre-season practice type games. There was a program or a team sheet, I believe, for the first game they ever played, even as a practice match against Swan Districts in '87. Yeah, I haven't got that, but other than that, I'd have 90% of what was made for practice games. So fair bit, and again. I'm going to take you back to jumpers now, but they come in really handy as well for being able to say who played, who wore that number. A lot of people wouldn't realise that in those early days, the WAFL and the Eagles were so combined and close together that Eagles players, the WAFL players, would actually play for the Eagles in practice matches at times. They'd have a ruckman who wasn't ready to go, and they'd be playing a practice match against someone. So they'd roll out a WAFL ruckman in a practice match, and that jumper might only ever have been worn by that WAFL ruckman in one practice match. So without that sort of information, again, your provenance is difficult to get at. And for WAFL, you know, we had a conversation last week about Guillermo Ochoa, I think his name was, who was a 2004, was it?
Yep.
Peel Premiership player.
Yeah, the Peel Colts Premiership.
So, you know, without the budget, you're never finding out who wore that jumper.
That's right. And quite funny about that is he actually didn't know it was his either.
Is that right?
So I
didn't know that was his number?
No.
Okay.
I actually contacted him on Facebook and asked him if he was the same guy, because it was, you know, it's a weird name.
Yeah.
And he was the only one I could find, and he was in Melbourne, and he was a football fan. So I thought, okay, there's a very good chance it's him. So I messaged him, and he said, oh, yeah, that brings back some memories, but I don't think anyone wore number 40 in 2004. And I said, you might want to double check that, mate, because I'm pretty sure that was you. And he said, looking through the record, he said that he looked at the record as well.
Yeah.
So that's where your footy budget comes up as well.
Yep.
Is he looked at that and saw the Peel, he didn't actually play in that game, the
right.
Colts Premiership game.
Yep.
So he said, oh, no one wore it because he wasn't in that game. So he's obviously forgotten as well. And he's looked back and gone, oh, you're right, I actually did play in number 40 that season. So yeah, it's amazing. Even players who do wear it, they also need to look back at the footy budget as well.
And you know as well as I do, players' memories of their own jumpers, especially those players who played a lot of games, can be pretty ordinary.
Yeah.
You know, they'll tell you if you meet a player, oh, this was my such and such jumper, you know, my first jumper I wore in my first game. I had one recently, another collector. I won't name the details because of that collector's privacy, I guess, but, you know, had bought a jumper from a player and was told it was the jumper he wore in his first game. Mm-hmm. But when you did the work and you found that you looked at the style of the jumper, you could date it to a particular period. And once you date it to that particular period, you could check the budget and you go, well, actually, that was he only played 1 year in the period they were wearing that style, and he wore a different number for that 1 year. So I'd say he's come along to the club and they've given him last year's jumper to wear on the training track or something like that, but he didn't wear it in a game. So that sort of stuff sort of highlights to me, I suppose, that players don't always cherish the stuff like we do and know really what it was and what it was for.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, the number of players that I've talked to who clearly aren't really invested in their own jumpers, and they're just really surprised that we know more about them than they even do. So, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we'll move away from the footy budgets now, and I'll ask you one question before we get really in depth with jumpers.
Yep.
I get asked a lot, actually, the woolen jumpers, as we mentioned. Now, previous to the acrylic jumpers, were they actually wool?
Yeah, they were. They were wool fibre, and it was really scratchy stuff.
Yep.
So I've got a few of those around. I've got a 1945 or 6, can't remember off the top of my head, East Fremantle jumper, and it's this horrible scratchy stuff that you really wouldn't want to wear. And I remember wearing the acrylic playing junior footy in the 80s and thinking, this is horrible.
Yeah.
And, you know, it rained and it's heavy, and I don't know how the hell they wore that stuff. Just must have been horrible.
Do you know when they brought the acrylic in?
So you started seeing blends, acrylic blends in the 60s from memory.
Okay.
So I've actually done, and my brother's done probably more than I have, just again on this provenance stuff, just getting an idea date wise of when Seacom, because that, you know, now Burley Seacom, but Seacom back then were the WA manufacturer of jumpers, and 99% of jumpers in this state came from Seacom. Yeah, and you can date them to a period based on what they're made of and what the blend is. So you know, you're getting in through the 70s, you're pretty much into your acrylics, whereas before that you're a blend, and before that you're pure wool stuff. Yeah, right. So we've sort of been able to narrow that time frame on a manufacture of a jumper purely through the whether it's a 70-30 or an 80-20 or 100%, or you know, so it takes a bit of work to do that, because you've actually got to be 100% sure that the jumper you've got is a particular date before you can then add that to your database that helps you to identify what materials they were using. Yeah. So,
crikey, it just gets more in depth there, really, doesn't it?
Well, it does, mate. It's the work as well. But I really like a puzzle. So you know, I've been a journalist my whole career. Yeah, and that was what I love doing, is sort of, you know, investigating things and solving puzzles. And so, you know, when someone gives me a jumper and says, you know, can you tell me when this is from? I love being able to say, you know, it was worn in these 3 games in 1967, and you know, that gives me a bit of a buzz. So to be able to, sometimes you can't be that specific, but you can say, look, it was worn between this period and that period. And some of the things that I found in terms of the jumpers worn in the WAFL, and the way that, right down to the way that they sewed the number onto the back. They sewed it in a particular way for a couple of seasons that you can actually say, okay, that jumper with that particular way of sewing the numbers is only from that period.
Yeah, okay.
Again, it's a puzzle, mate. It's better than doing Sudoku.
I've been told a lot that the numbers that they used, the material that they used, was actually the shorts material.
Yeah, that's right. For Seacom, right through the 80s into the 70s, they were using the short material.
Yeah.
But before that, it was sort of. I don't think it was the short material before that. My brother would probably know better than me. You can't tell from the photo, so that I haven't really thought, well, I'd better put some work into that.
Yeah.
But also, for a time, some WAFL clubs in the 60s used Jason knitting wools and had vinyl numbers like they did in the VFL as well. So again, that narrows your time period in which a jumper was used if you've got a WAFL jumper with a vinyl sewn on number on it. So so there's some really interesting stuff in terms of material that allows you to to know what you've got in terms of wool jumpers, and guys like Joel Williams and the other bigger collectors in Melbourne of clubs know a lot of this stuff as well. So while I might know the WAFL stuff, they're a font of information on tags and material and style of numbers and patching over. Like patching over is a thing that just does my head in. You're never going to find certain West Coast jumpers because they're just patched over.
Yep.
So and I got some great photos at home of the 87, which breaks my heart, 87 Burswood jumpers, and they didn't even take the Burswood off. They just sewed an SGO over the top of it, and it didn't cover the whole Burswood logo. So you've actually got an SGO sewed over the Burswood, and I'm looking at all these Eagles photos, these headshots from 88.
Yeah.
Literally, you can see they're all wearing 87 Burswood jumpers with an SGO over it, which makes the 87 jumper much harder to find because most of them got reused.
Yeah.
And you expect things like the 87. They were an 87, a blue jumper in 87 for a couple of games for a clash.
Yeah.
Also, there must be blue jumpers with Burswood logos on them. I've never seen one.
Yeah, right.
I suspect they either sewed over it with SGIO for 88 or ripped the logo off, and you're not going to find one.
That's sad, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a bit. And there are other jumpers you're not going to find. So that pre-season game I talked about in 87 against Footscray, they hadn't signed a sponsor by that stage, so there's no sponsors logo on it. Yeah. So it's a clean yellow 1987 jumper with no logo on it. Well, you can guarantee as soon as they signed a sponsor, they just sewed the logos on those jumpers.
Yeah. So
you're never going to find a jumper from the 87 pre-season game with no Burswood logo on it.
Yeah.
It's
pretty unlikely, isn't it?
Yeah, you could probably get an 87 and unpick the Burswood and go, there you go, there's my... But, it'll leave you feeling a bit hollow, and you'd have also damaged an 87 Burswood, so I don't know that you want to do that much either.
Yeah, what's better, a pre-season or a regular season?
Yeah, well, and an 87 pre-season that you can't prove is an 87 pre-season, I suppose, unless it's got something unique about it, like, it was sewn, the number was sewn out of kilter or something.
Yeah. Well, we're starting to make our way towards jumpers now. We're trying to veer away a little bit, but we just keep coming back. But that's the nature of this podcast. But I do want to ask, obviously we mentioned that you are a West Coast fan.
Yep.
You mentioned to me that you were a little bit of a Bulldog sympathiser before.
Yeah, I was. Basically, I'm a West Perth supporter in the WAFL, and West Perth wears red and blue. And on the old crappy black and white TV that I used to watch in country WA back in the 80s, and the winners would come on an afternoon, I thought I'd better pick a team.
Yep.
And I saw Footscray, red, white and blue, and I thought, well, that's pretty close to West Perth's red and blue. Mm-hmm. And, I know Melbourne wear red and blue, but my TV was so crappy, and Melbourne were the Demons, and in WA, Perth are the Demons, they wear red and black.
Yep.
So I thought Melbourne wore red and black.
Fair enough.
So there was no way I was going to barrack for them. So it was Footscray. So I did have a bit of a soft spot for Footscray, but once 87, the Eagles came over, that was pretty much it.
So it just stopped? You didn't support them, or?
No, not really. I mean, I was never big on them. It was just like, if you kind of, a sport or a game that you don't care about that much, but you kind of go, I'll go for that mob. That's kind of what it was for me in Footscray, because it was the WAFL was it for me, and for a lot of West Australians as well. I'm not sure again how many people listening to this podcast will remember that time or understand that time, but Victorian football was a bit of an afterthought for us. It was all about beating the Vics once a year in a State of Origin game, and other than that, it was about West Perth, East Perth this weekend. It's a big derby. It's going to be huge.
It's amazing when you look back at some of those old games. The crowds that you got into those games were massive.
Yeah, and I probably missed the best of that, because first game was 85 with my grandparents. I don't have a lot of memory, I suppose, of it. I was 7. And within 2 years the Eagles were along, and it was literally the WAFL fell off a cliff when the Eagles came along crowd wise. And so, the one taste I've got of that was in '93. West Perth played their last game ever at their long-time home ground. They were moving out to the outer suburbs, and they had 20,000 plus in for their last home and away game at Leederville Oval. And it was, I was literally sitting on the roof of the lower level of the grandstand, because you couldn't get it, you couldn't see otherwise.
Yeah, right.
And it was like old, Victorians will probably know this. The people who follow those St Kildas and Collingwoods, Victoria Park and Moorabbin and Glenferrie, it was like that. And it was a big day at a suburban ground, and it was just it's just a fond memory, I suppose.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, so obviously I was born in '85, and pretty much by the time I was old enough to watch TV, West Coast were playing, so WAFL didn't make it big with me, unfortunately, but I did grow to enjoy it as a secondary type of football. So yeah, we'll move into your WAFL jumpers to start off with.
Sure.
I'd imagine you have a pretty large, decent sized collection anyway of WAFL jumpers.
Yeah, not a huge collection, I suppose. I'm not chasing sublimated WAFL jumpers.
Okay.
Occasionally I'll buy a West Perth player issue, recent one. They're my club. Especially if they do a heritage jumper or an Indigenous or Foxtel Cup. They played the Foxtel Cup a few times, so I grab some of those. But I don't chase every one every year. Mm-hmm. So really, I'm after wool, which means I'm after 20 years old or further or older. So realistically, they're not actually popping up that often. The retails are, but the player issues aren't actually popping up that often. Yeah. So I suppose I'm looking for quality. I'm looking for provenance. And I've done some photo matching of jumpers of WAFL player jumpers. I've ruled some out for purchasing as well on the basis that I wasn't convinced it was what it purported to be. So I've got WAFL player issue jumpers. I probably should have looked up exactly how many I've got, but it's probably only for WAFL clubs as opposed to the state team. It's probably only 20 or 30 or something.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it's not a massive collection, but I like to think it's quality what I've got there. Mm-hmm.
They're the West Perth Falcons now, right?
Yeah, they are. So they were the Cardinals.
They were Cardinals,
before 1983. So 81 and earlier they were the Cardinals. Yeah.
So do you have any Cardinals era jumpers?
Yeah. So I've got a John Duckworth number 1.
Yeah, right.
So Johnny Duckworth went on and played VFL and won a Magarey medal in South Australia in the SANFL. So I've got what else have I got? West Perth. I've got a couple of other that I know are West Perth player issue, but you can't pinpoint a year.
Yeah, okay.
My brother's got more.
Yeah,
he's certainly put a real effort into West Perth player issue jumpers. Whereas I'm when I collect things, I want it all. Right? I want the whole collection, as you've heard with budgets and records.
Yeah.
Right? I want every single one.
Yeah.
It's not possible with WAFL jumpers.
Yeah.
And if it's not possible, I'm not going to put 1,000,000% into it.
Fair enough.
Because it's just going to annoy the hell out of me. It's got to be OCD. We've all got all us collectors have got some OCD, right?
Definitely.
So as a result, I just want a few here and there. So, I won't list off my favourite WAFL ones yet because you'll probably ask me to do that later on in the podcast. But certainly I've got some some really nice sort of 50s, 60s, and 70s wool player issue jumpers, and really there's not a lot missing, but those WAFL clubs in those days, just like VFL clubs in those days, didn't change their designs very often. Mm-hmm. So, I'll probably at some stage go and have a look at designs and work out whether maybe, Subiaco might have worn 4 basic different designs between World War II and 1987 when the Eagles come in. And I might go, okay, I want one of each.
Okay.
And concentrate on those 4. I haven't gone down that path yet because there's so many other things to collect, but I think that's probably where I'm headed at some point, and that's where I'm with state jumpers.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to chase a WA/WA State of Origin jumper for every single season. One, because you'd never get the provenance on every year.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of difference that you can identify between, say, a 62 and a 63.
Yeah.
There is those two. Let's say 64 and 65 jumper. There's not a lot of difference.
Okay.
Right? So, and realistically, I've got the photos because I've got estate team photos for most seasons back to the war. Mm-hmm. But picking the difference because you really want to see the numbers, and they're the posed team photos.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to chase that, but I want the major design changes.
Yeah.
And I'm a couple short back to the war. Yeah.
When you say you mark them off and you check them off as you go, do you have an actual list of all, like the jumpers, for instance, of the ones that you need or that they have had throughout the years?
So for some things, yes. So for the Eagles wool jumpers, I've got a list of every wool era jumper, I'll call it, because there was one non-wool jumper, the Ross Glendinning lace-up, which I don't seem to get my hands on, given the WA Museum has it. And for WA state jumpers, I have a list of the major design changes, and I haven't done that yet for the WAFL club jumpers, but we'll do at some point. And I've got a database of the jumpers that I've got in wool. And I really need to get one done for the sublimated jumpers, which I haven't yet got to. But I've got a pretty good handle on what I've got, and I've got photos of 90% of them. Yeah,
awesome. So when you say you want quality over quantity, are you looking for the quality of players or the quality of the jumper itself or a specific year or anything like that you really want to get over the quality of them, quantity of them, rather?
Good question. You should have been a journalist.
No, definitely not.
A little bit of both.
Okay.
So, like most collectors, if it's a jumper you really want, you'll take the player that you can get, and then upgrade it later if the opportunity presents itself. And if you've got a choice between a good player or an outstanding player, you'll take the outstanding player.
Absolutely.
Unless the money, of course, is makes it not doable. So so for some of my some of the jumpers I would say are quality jumpers for the WAFL in my collection are quality jumpers, largely because of their age and the player who wore them. Mm-hmm. And I've got a couple of others around who I know are player issue jumpers, and it could be any one of about a dozen players who wore it. And I'm not that fussed. It's representative of that era for that club. And as I said, everything on it tells me it is a player issue WAFL club jumper. Yeah.
Do you collect outside of West Perth as well?
Yeah, so every club. Yeah, every WAFL club.
Nice.
Yeah, but not sublimated. So, that rules out, I suppose, Peel Thunder pretty much, other than the first year or two where they would have worn a little bit of wool. Pretty much they've been sublimated their entire existence. So every other club, I do collect, and I do want, jumpers from those clubs. Yeah. But again, I need to probably really sort of nail down what I'm going to collect, and I think I'm probably moving towards collecting the different designs. And some clubs like West Perth has worn a red jumper with a blue sash every year since World War II, and there's not much change in terms of style. Yeah. And I'm not going to go down to, well, did they have a vinyl number or a material number, or did they have, did it have a WAFL logo on it or not? So I'll probably just get a few from West Perth.
Yeah.
But other clubs have really changed. Like East Fremantle or a blue jumper with nothing on it. Then they had
Yeah.
a blue jumper with an EFFC monogram, and then a blue jumper with white and blue hoops, kind of
Yeah.
like Geelong. Then they moved into the Freo Heritage jumper from 07. Yeah, that was their East Fremantle jumper, and then they had the monogram on it, and then they had the monogram in a different spot. So they've changed a lot.
Yeah.
But some clubs haven't. So yeah, I'll need to sort of get that list together and work out how much money I'm going to have to spend.
I was going to say, there's a fair chance that by the end of it, once you're happy with it, you probably end up moving back to West Perth and going, all right, maybe I will look at the vinyl numbers and things like that.
Yeah, it's possible, although they're not probably available in large enough numbers to be that fussy.
Yeah.
But, the other thing is they're not that expensive.
Yeah, okay.
WAFL jumpers, like most WAFL things, sadly, the prices aren't going up. The real quality, okay, it still holds its value, like any area of collecting, but kind of the lesser stuff, it just seems to be in a constant state of free fall, and that all comes back to the fact that you were born in '85 and you don't really have a connection with the WAFL. Yeah. So the people of your generation aren't prepared to spend money on it, but you'll spend a lot of money on another David Mundy jumper.
Absolutely.
So so that means the value just doesn't sort of stay where it is. Whereas even an unpopular Melbourne AFL club, whereas you may not expect prices to be that high, they're still there. They're not falling. They're just maybe not going up at the same rate as West Coast jumpers or Port Adelaide jumpers or something like that.
Yeah. Grand final jumpers for WAFL. Do you have any?
You wouldn't know. There's no difference. So they don't have the grand final patch or anything like that. I know I have one.
Okay.
And I know I have one because the player gave it to me and said that was his. There's no guarantee, as we've already discussed. Yeah. But I think it's a pretty good chance, given that when that player played and what jumpers he would have owned. I think it's a good chance. That'd be it. Only the one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You reckon you may have some more, or you just don't think so, or you don't know at all?
Have more jumpers or
more grand final ones?
Yeah. So there's no way of knowing.
Yeah.
Look, some of them you can rule out because the club didn't play grand final in the era they wore that jumper. So you go, all right, no way. But others, you can look up, and I've got an East Fremantle jumper from the mid-late 60s worn by Trevor Sprigg, right, who played state footy for WA and also for Tasmania.
Yeah.
Really well-known player. I can't remember if it stretches back as far as 65 that they wore that jumper, but if it did, he might have worn it in the grand final.
Okay.
And there's just no...
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do unless you go and photo match that jumper and go, I've got a photo of him in the 65 GF and it's not him. It's just too hard.
Yeah. And even asking the player, they probably wouldn't know either.
Yeah, no, well, that's right. And the only reason I'm reasonably confident this jumper I've got from Subiaco's 1973 premiership... Yeah. Apparently, is because the player didn't play a lot more than that season, and he did play in the grand final. Mm-hmm. And I should probably get the DVD out and see if I can photo match it, because I've got that game on DVD, so I could probably give it a shot. But again, you're looking for whether there's some sort of anomaly on the jumper, and the vision, video vision from 1973 WAFL games is black and white and a bit crappy. So you probably want a photo more than a video. Yeah,
and there's one thing that does stop us from having time to do all these things, and that would be kids, wouldn't it?
That would be kids. Yes, a kid for me, just a kid. But that has seriously hampered my collecting abilities. And I suppose, like everyone, a lot of the listeners will have experienced this, and certainly a lot of the listeners that I speak with or I've done some trading with have been through the same sort of thing, and collecting's taken a sideline for a while, and so I suppose I focus a bit more now on the low-hanging fruit, the things you already know are there, and you just need to make a phone call every now and again until the person finally lets go of it. We've all had those. And also, I suppose some of the stuff I've done over the years to make people come to me. rather than me have to constantly look.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I look like everyone else does.
Yeah.
You know, I'm constantly scouring when I've got time, looking for stuff.
Time's a thing, though.
Yeah, it is. And so a lot of the stuff that I did, I suppose, the previous 10 years was to build a bit of a brand, as I discussed. So, you know, like a lot of the guys here, I've got a Facebook page for WAFL collectables. So I got 3,000 odd followers on that, and you know, it's a good branding tool.
Yeah,
doesn't actually get me much, but it's a branding tool. So often someone will say, "Oh, you know, I follow your Facebook page." And go, "Oh, okay."
Yeah,
and it might be an ex-player or something. So you know, you got some awareness there. They know that you're actually serious about this. You're not just some person harassing them. So yeah, that sort of thing I found is important. The column in the footy budget. Also called WAFL Collectables.
Yeah.
Again, I don't get much out of that, but it's a good branding exercise. And in the early days, I picked up a bit out of it, but I suspect that the people reading it each week are the same people at the same WAFL games. And by now, if I haven't heard from them, I'm probably not going to. But I have had, you know, I've had two players who've approached me after reading the column.
That's cool.
Yeah, and both were ex-WAFL and ex-West Coast players.
Oh, nice.
And that you know ended well. I got a couple of nice jumpers out of that.
Yeah.
And, but you know, realistically, it's pretty tough. I don't know if I've even expressed this thought before, but it's really tough in this town to approach players, and I just don't do it because. It's Perth, right? So it's not Melbourne where maybe a 1990s AFL player can sort of disappear into normal life and not be recognised. Yeah. You know, in Perth, anyone who's ever pulled on a boot for West Coast is still known, you know, and still carries some profile and probably gets approached and asked for autographs, even if they only played like 7 or 8 games. Yeah. So it's really it's kind of like they're still famous, whereas I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of stuff on Facebook lately about people approaching ex AFL players in Melbourne, and just wondering like how do you sort of go about doing that? And I just think it's a bit more difficult here. I don't know if you agree with me being a Fremantle person.
100%. Like you say, you see it a lot on the Facebook pages at the moment where people seem to be doing it easily.
Yep.
And I think about it at night time. I think, maybe I should send a few messages to a few players, but I have absolutely no idea how to word or how to go about it. Because, like you say, they're pretty well known here, and I don't know. I don't want to seem like the same sort of bloke that just walk up to them in the shopping centre and say, "Hey, give me something." Like,
it's cringe, isn't it?
It's
really difficult. So you know, I've been looking at a lot of that lately, and just sort of thinking, you know, I don't think I can move down that path. You know, so you might miss out on a few things there. Someone might strike it lucky one day, but it's an interesting phenomenon. It is in the jumper collecting game.
Actually, the only reason I did this is because I actually picked up Craig Gallagher's away 95 jumper, and I just wanted to email him and just show him it. Just in case, you know, he didn't have anything or... so I did actually find his email. I can't remember how I found it, but I found it. I sent an email just hoping it was him, and it turned out to be him, and he messaged back and said, it was tremendous to see it, and he absolutely loved it. And he found out that I actually work around the corner from where he works. So he said he's going to come see me one day and take a photo, he'll sign it for me. And he said that he's got a few jumpers at his place and I can come around and have a look. So
cool.
So just those connections that you can build is really good. But again, it's not trying to pressure him in anything. It's just saying, I've got this of yours. Just want to have a look at it. Tell me if it's yours for a start, and just want to let you know that I have it. And if you ever want it or anything like that, just let me know. And it's just those connections that you build that you're not pressuring them, I guess, into doing something that they may not want to do. But you never know in the future that it could work out for you.
Well, you never know, mate, and you know, it's obviously you've got the gumption up to go and do that. I'm not sure I could, but I suppose it helps being Craig Callaghan. I don't want to talk Craig Callaghan down as well, by the way, number 42, Swan Districts player as well.
Yep.
But you know, I suppose a bit different if you're a 100-game player or again, and again, not wanting to talk Fremantle down, but West Coast had a lot of success in that 90s period, so their players are obviously better known than some of those early Fremantle players who I think of more as WAFL players who got a year or two of AFL football while the club was, you know, severely hampered in terms of who they were allowed to recruit. So, you know, you look at your your friggin' Craig Burrows and that sort of vintage of players. Probably wouldn't have got an AFL shot otherwise.
I want to say Tony Godden in there as well, because
but
he did play for us both.
He played for West Coast, yeah. And look, there's a few others in there as well who are very good WAFL players, but even some of them who'd had a shot elsewhere, like your Todd Ridleys, had a shot at Essendon, but realistically was a good level WAFL player.
Yeah,
got a bit more AFL out of him because he was at a team that was, as I said, pretty hamstrung in terms of their recruiting abilities.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move into a bit more of a centre stage here, and we'll start talking about West Coast.
Sure.
So, early jumpers, obviously you've already mentioned there's 87, 88. What do you have from those particular early days?
Okay, so 87 I've got a bit. So I've got an 87 match worn with the Burswood logo. I've got an 87. I've got both 87 trainings. The one that they had before Burswood came on board, which is a Puma jumper.
Yeah.
And the one that they got when Burswood did come on board. Then I have not got the Clash blue jumper that they wore in a couple of games that year, sadly. But I also got, as I wore over here today, as you saw, the full. I've got the full tracksuit. The
full tracksuit.
I've got the royal blue silky tracksuit pants. Yeah. And the gaudy yellow jacket, Puma jacket, which is a cracker.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, I've got two, so I do actually wear one to games.
Yeah. I tell you what, when you wore that over, I could have swore that was a remake or a reproduction. It looked so good. It was so crisp and nice. And then you told me it was the original. I was like, wow.
Yeah. It's actually Mark Zanotti's 1987 jacket.
Yeah.
It's a belter. So I love wearing that, and I do get stopped usually at West Coast games by someone asking about the jacket and where they can buy one, and I have to tell them it's actually vintage. Good luck. I have an 88 match worn, the yellow.
Yep.
There's a bit of a gap. I haven't got anything from 89. I've got a 90 match worn, which I was not convinced about.
Okay.
And I wouldn't have bought it, in fact. I was so unconvinced about it, but I got given it.
Yeah, right.
And recently photo matched it.
Only recently?
Only recently. I've had it in the collection a few years.
Yeah, right.
And my brother just messaged me out of the blue saying, "You're going to love me," and sent me a photo that he'd found in the West Coast annual report. Don't know why I'd never looked. But I think it was the 91 annual report, and it had a 90 photo that they'd used as a file photo.
Yep.
And there was some damage to the eagle head on it.
Okay. That
matched, and you're sitting there going, "My God, I can't believe it matches."
Yeah.
Because there were a few things about it that just put me off.
Okay.
The gold colour of the eagle head and the word Eagles across the front was much golder than the wings, the yellow wings.
Yep.
The tag on it, there were two tags. One in the middle and one... both in the middle from memory. And I hadn't seen that on a West Coast player issue before.
Yep.
There was something else about it as well that kind of made me think, I'm not sure. But the number was properly stitched. It was the Seacom stitching. That, you can't just do on your old home sewing machine. Mm-hmm. So, so that was great to be able to confirm that. Haven't got any grand final jumpers.
Haven't got any?
Haven't got any grand final jumpers. Okay. We're not paying thousands of dollars for an 18 grand final jumper. Or,
the
06s didn't hit the market like the 18 ones did at a club auction. I could probably stretch to it if it was the number one thing in my collection, but I'd rather have a 100-year-old something or other from the WAFL than a current.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and maybe I'll regret that, but anyway.
Have you ever had any opportunities to get one? Not the 18s,
only the auction for the 18. Yeah, no, I've never actually been offered another one. I've seen them in other people's collections. I've seen a couple of players' ones in there. One in particular in the player's house.
Okay,
but it wasn't on offer.
Yeah.
But also, again, doing a bit of research recently, and I'd be pretty confident that there are no 1991 grand final jumpers around.
Really?
Because I think they just badge the jumper for 1992.
Really?
So I think they just ripped off the 91 logo and went
That
back.
hurts.
Because it was actually one of the very few years where they used the same jumper the next season.
Yeah, okay.
So usually with West Coast, there's, especially in the more modern era, there's something. You know, they've moved something, they change a collar, something different on the tag or the GPS pouch or something. But those years it was a bit more. There was a bit more ability, as I mentioned, with the 87 jumper being patched over the Burswood with the SJO.
Yeah.
So 91, 92 was just the same jumper. And, I'm reasonably confident that there's no 91 or unless someone, took it with them after the game, popped it in the kit bag and walked away.
I would have thought surely that someone would have.
It'd be interesting. I'd love to hear if anyone's actually got one. I'd love to hear if there is a 91 jumper, GF jumper in existence. I mean, that was a pretty important game.
Absolutely.
The first grand final involving an interstate team, because Sydney hadn't been able to make one in the years they'd been the relocated South Melbourne. So, I'd love to know if one's out there.
And of course being at Waverley as well.
Yeah, that's right. The Angry Anderson on the Batmobile grand final that we all talk about. That sort of period I'm lacking a bit, I guess. But I've got some 94s, not grand final. I've got some 95s. I've got 3 of the 496s. I'm missing one of the pre-seasons, which was still in wool. They were actually not so they were actually the 95 jumpers.
Okay.
But they pulled the AFL patch off and put the centenary patch on.
Yeah.
So, again, whether that means there's fewer 95s out there because they got patched over for the 96 pre-season, I don't know.
They had a different colour blue then as well, didn't they?
They had the royal blue in 95 and they had the royal blue in 96, but they added the navy. Yeah. So the navy became the... I always get mixed up, but the Navy became the home from memory and the Royal became the away, and then they for the regular season they had the sublimated home and away Royal and Navy.
The reason I could remember the Navy being a home jumper is I just can only picture Guy McKenna getting destroyed against Carlton.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's your memory. You would have 96. No, you would have switched to Freo by then, wouldn't you?
Yeah, obviously I was still a bit of a West Coast.
Okay.
I watched every game still on West Coast. I would have actually been in Walpole for that game that I remember, because I remember sitting in the little cabin in Walpole and watching them against the Blues, and Guy McKenna running through the centre and getting absolutely cleaned up and just looking absolutely horrendous on the ground. So I'll never forget that memory.
Fair enough. I can't say I remember the particular incident, but footy was full of those in those days.
I can't believe you don't remember that.
I've got some vague memory of McKenna getting cleaned up. Who was it by?
I can't remember.
Andrew McKay or one of those
possibly
sort of
was, yeah. He got. I think it was quite high. I didn't even get a free kick for it, but I think he was spinning in the air a bit too, and he hit the ground pretty hard on face first. So,
mate, in those days, as long as you hit a player fairly, it wasn't about intent or whether you ran past the ball. As long as you didn't hit him in the head, away you go, Tiger.
It's amazing when you remember those sort of things. Like I remember Woosh's hit against the Lions as well, or the Bears. In 96 probably. Possibly wrong there, but up in the Gabba as well. On the boundary line, I remember that one. That was a big hit.
Mate, Woosha did so many that
true.
You kind of forget.
I was just thinking that 95, I was just mentioning the different colour. I was thinking the blue, the lighter blue, the navy blue, the royal blue, was like a little bit bluer than 94.
Well, I can't say I've actually compared them to work that out, whether there's a difference in the blue or not.
Yeah, okay.
I'll do that when I get home.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. Just some reason I got that vague memory of just seeing it and just looked a little bluer. Like
maybe you got a better telly that year.
Maybe.
My parents bought a nice, like my old black and white clanger. Maybe you got a better telly and you thought, their jumper's a bit bluer this year.
Possibly, yeah. Could be a bit crazy there.
I'll confirm that for you.
All right, beautiful. All right. So moving on from 96 up until where does it end for you? Where did it just stop really collecting?
Well, yeah, therein lies the real question for me. I mean, we're at a period now, and I don't want to denigrate anyone else's collection, by the way, but it does leave me a little bit cold sometimes that we're now getting 6 or even 8 jumpers to collect in a season, sublimated jumpers. And the West Coast prices are getting out of hand too on especially on things like the Indigenous, or if there's a special game, a Subiac Oval farewell or whatever. So and I suppose this is part of my OCD. If I can't have it all, then I'm kind of not fussed.
Yeah.
So if I feel that at some point that it gets unobtainable, then I'm just as likely to chuck it in. And by the way, that's what I did with select footy cards.
Yeah, okay.
Nothing against select footy cards. They do a very good job. They do some nice cards, right? But I collected as a kid and chased every Scanlon's card. And the set, when I first started collecting, about 144 cards. I got all 144 cards, and it took me the whole friggin' season to get them. But once I get to a point where, it's one of 10, or one of 12, or one of 25 or something, and I'm going, I don't think I'm ever going to get that, because it's going to cost me too much to get that one card.
Yeah.
Plus, I want all these ones. I'm talking $4 or $5 grand outlay to get the set of cards for the year, the master set of West Coast.
Yep.
I just dumped it. So 96 was the last year I collected Select.
Yeah, right.
And then, and the same sort of, I love jumpers. I love the old jumpers, and I'll continue chasing the old jumpers. The new jumpers, I buy them, right? I still buy them. I've gone through periods where I thought I'm not going to get them this year. And I've told people I'm not going to get them, and then I've got them. And I've gone through periods where I haven't bought them. So in 2014, I didn't buy at the auction West Coast name jumper. They had the name for 1 week.
Yep.
So I still haven't got one. I narrowly missed one last year.
Yep.
And someone else told me recently I had two, and so I only sold one a few weeks ago. That's life. So I've missed a few things that now I'm trying to go back and get, and so I keep thinking, well, I better keep getting them while I am interested, just in case. And I suppose you can always sell them off later. And so I've got the full set of 2019 West Coast PIs. I haven't got a WAFL PI actually for West Coast. Which is the only sublimated WAFL jumper I would go and get, because it's a West Coast jumper. But 2018 I don't have a grand final, but I've got the rest of them. 2017 I think I've got them all. So I'm still chasing them.
Yeah,
but I'm also quite comfortable getting an average player.
Yeah,
maybe trying to pick a diamond in the rough. Maybe trying to. Pick the guy that's gone to Fat Camp and get his jumper and have him turn out to be Jeremy McGovern or something like that. I haven't had much luck in recent years. I think I've picked out a Dan Venables, and I've grabbed Partington, who's already left the club.
He's already Partington's from the club.
He has. And I got a Brander.
Yep.
He's still there, but maybe only for another season if he doesn't start to work his way in. I'm quite comfortable with that. I mean, I've got a Kennedy, I've got a Darling, I've got a from recent years a McGovern, a Nat Nui. So I'm not really chasing players. I'd love a better player, but I'm not willing to shell out $1 million for it.
Yeah, fair enough. Probably hurt you to hear that I actually have about 25 of the Freo name jumpers.
25.
Yeah, 25, 26, something like that.
Jesus, mate. And so what was the damage on them? About $75 a lot? That's right, $3 a jumper or something? You guys are spoiled at the prices you get your jumpers.
Yes, we certainly are. The club have listened to a lot of us over the years. We want the jumpers, we want to be able to collect them, so we have been lucky enough that they do listen. I do feel massively for West Coast fans who are trying to collect jumpers, because it can get out of hand.
Yeah,
pricing wise especially. So
it is, mate. It is out of hand, and they're my club. I support my club. I don't think they've necessarily done the best by collectors. That's not what they're there for. They're there to play football, but I think probably they could do a bit more to help jumper collectors out at West Coast. Last year, not selling any home and away jumpers. I mean, the previous year they sold them at the Gala auction. The year before they'd sold them on the online auction. You had a chance. Yeah. You could nab a rubbish player at a couple of $100, and I know people out there may not realise, but a rubbish player at a couple of $100 sometimes. Which is, you can buy some stars for that for some of the Victorian clubs. But I saw on one of the Facebook groups today a bloke was asking about a West Coast 2019 Indigenous jumper. He wanted to get one. I don't know how serious a collector he was. It wasn't a name I recognised. But I went back and had a look, and like the cheapest was $550 plus bidders premium, buyers premium, which is what 20%. Yeah. So that's another 110 plus postage if you're not in, with West Coast packaging and stuff. You're nearly up for $700, and for that you were getting someone at the bottom end of the 22.
Yeah,
and you just go, that is getting out of hand.
Yeah, it is.
That's for me $700. I want a really good jumper for that.
Absolutely.
I want a friggin' a star player. And I want it to be a really nice jumper, not just a 2019 Indigenous, Dan Venables or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, in comparison, I mean, I didn't grab it because I ended up getting Dave Mundy's, but I could have got Nat Fife's retro round match worn jumper last year where we wore the old anchor for $625.
Yeah, so that's the Brownlow winner in his Brownlow year.
Exactly right.
Yeah, we're a bit different to the bottom end of the best 22.
Yeah.
And, it's all supply and demand as well, so I can't complain. The market is what the market is.
That's it.
But, I think the club could do a bit more. And, there was that whole thing in... I think it was early 19 or late 18 where a spare set just suddenly appeared at Gym Kid Sport in Perth on the shelves, and people just picking them up for nothing. And you'd like to think that if there's those sorts of jumpers just around, that maybe the club could help some people out a bit rather than just suddenly going on sale for $60 or $70 a jumper at Gym Kid Sport.
Yeah.
But I suppose that's something for West Coast to work out whether they want to or have got the time. But I know some other clubs that I've seen are far better organised. I mean, Port Adelaide with their setup, and the day that you go down and you line up, and at least that's fair. There's something organised. The collectors have got a chance to get what they want. I think that's a reasonable way of doing it. The club still makes money out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I mean, if it's all about making money, when you're putting out one auction a year, where, like you said, last year it was zero, they're not making that much money out of them. But they think, we've put out one auction and they're going to make a ton of money from that. But if you're bringing out jumpers throughout the year that people can get a hold of, they're definitely going to make that money out of it. No problems whatsoever.
Mate, absolutely. I mean, if West Coast was to put up, was just to order directly from ISC, an extra set.
Yeah. And
sell them at, maybe for your best 10 players, $500 each, and $400 each for your next 10, $300 each. They'd sell a lot.
Yeah.
And what would they have paid for them?
Yeah.
Like, what's their price from ISC? So they can make money.
$100.
Yeah, maybe. So they can make money if it's about making money. Or it's not so West Coast needs money, but if West Coast decided they've got to make that money for their budget or whatever, or for fundraising for charities, or they can make that money.
Yeah.
And serve their supporters who are collectors.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's jump back into... I think we ended up around about 96, 97. But we'll talk about like the mid or late 90s and the mid 2000s. There's a lot of good era, good times in there.
Yeah.
Obviously, 99, when they had the Navy with the awesome watermark AFL logo. I know you do have, or had, one of those.
Yes, I do have. Not much disappears from my collection. Okay. So if it goes into my collection, it tends to stay in my collection. I struggle to get my head around all the buy-sell groups and seeing people selling jumpers they picked up 2 weeks ago and 3 weeks ago, and I'm kind of scratching my head thinking, what'd you buy it for then? Like, what's the point of that?
Yeah.
So, I think I've maybe I've sold half a dozen jumpers ever.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe. Player issue, I mean, I've got some other jumpers around that, I've bought at op shops or something that sit in a pile, and suddenly someone wants them. I've sold those, but player issue, maybe half a dozen at the most. Right. So I've still got the Scotty Cummings,
beautiful jumper. That the only one reason I sold that is because I was going to America.
Yes, I'm glad you went to America.
No way it would be gone, so I'm upset that it's gone. But well,
very glad you went to America because I got the Scotty Cummings. But there is a bit of a hole in my collection there in that late 90s. I'm not the only one to have that sort of gap there. I don't think. There's not a lot around from that era.
No, they weren't easy to find.
No, and I know someone picked up a very nice 1996 player issue jumper for Ben Cousins recently, which was a beauty,
absolutely tremendous,
an absolute joy to look at. As I said, I've got 96 both a home and an away jumper, so that's fine. But yeah, there's not much in my collection from that period. There's the Scotty Cummings, there's a Fraser Gehrig, and then we start moving into the Ochas and the tri-panels. I do have an Ocha player issue.
Nice.
No, I keep forgetting. Is it Regan Duckworth or Simon Duckworth? Neither of whom registered a senior game for the club. I should know because Regan's an East Fremantle player and Simon's West Perth.
Gotcha.
I should really know, but I can't remember which one it is.
What number is it?
I think it's 43. Oh, I should know this. But again, my catalogue of West Coast sublimated isn't up to the stage of all my wool. My wool are catalogued.
Yeah.
Right down to I've detailed the sponsors' logos and where they are and the colours and the designs, and so I can really sort of pinpoint them. But I haven't got to the sublimated yet. I got photos probably.
Yeah.
So I've got a Duckworth, and then again, through that period where we wore the tri-panels, I don't know, maybe got half a dozen.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe more, but I haven't sat down and gone, right, have I got an 00 and an 01 and an 02? I just haven't done that yet.
Fair enough.
Need to.
Yep.
But my collection's not my West Coast. I think I counted the other day. I had 50-ish West Coast sublimated.
Okay.
So it's not a massive collection. There's people out there with much bigger collections. People out there with much bigger West Coast collections than that. I think Hayden would have many more. Brother I know has many, many more.
Yeah, right.
Christian Grapulin would have more. I'm sure there are others who've got more West Coast sublimated than that. I just haven't sat down and got to, okay, what do I need? And until I get my act together, which is hard with my daughter, as we've just discussed, it makes it hard to actually go and, okay, I've got to fill the gaps. Because those jumpers are out there.
Yeah.
You see the 2005 West Coast tri-panel for, I don't know, Michael Braun or something, and you can pick it up for a couple $100. But I go, do I have that one? and because it's not, I suppose, it's not as important to me as the wool or other parts of my collection, like my WAFL memorabilia and stuff. Often I think my money might be better spent somewhere else.
Fair enough. So most every West Coast collector has a Ben Cousins Chris Yard in their collection. Surely you've got something.
I have neither. I have neither.
That's very surprising.
It's simply because there's a bit of a premium on price for them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I will shell out for both at some stage.
Yep.
I have been tempted before, but it's just come at bad times, cash wise, or I've just spent a whole lot of money on something else, and I go, it's not at the top of my list. But I'm sure I'll shell out probably way too much for one of each at some point.
Fair enough.
It's a little disappointing, I suppose. I don't have either of those Brownlow winners. I've got a Pritis, so I've got the other Brownlow winner. But in terms of stars of West Coast, certainly they're at the top of what I'm missing player issue.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't got a Ross Glendinning, haven't got a Jakovic, haven't got a Matera.
Yeah, right.
But probably, if you're talking the absolute top dozen or so players, I'll probably have the one for the rest of them.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it's okay. I could put a bit more work in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so you mentioned something a fair bit earlier about the Ross Glendinning lace-up jumper.
Yeah.
Which is, I think it was a bit of a conjecture a while ago as to one that popped up, possibility that it was the one, but I think you shut that down pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'd seen that jumper previously.
So there's only one.
There is one. There is literally one.
And he's the only one that wore one.
He is the only one that wore one. Those who know a bit about history of jumpers would know that the lace-up was outlawed by the VFL in 87.
Yeah.
Someone broke a finger. Robbie Flower comes to mind. Joel will be able to tell you. I'm pretty sure it was Robbie Flower.
Okay.
And so they said no more lace-ups because his finger got caught in the lace.
Yep.
And that was it. And having already played in the VFL and being one of the few players who was established in the VFL pre-West Coast and then came back to West Coast, he'd worn a lace-up for North Melbourne, Ross Glendinning. So he went and got one made in Adelaide and wore that lace-up. Not every game, but he wore it for a few games.
Mm-hmm.
I have some photos of him in the lace-up from my photo collection.
Yep.
And it is the only one. And I asked Ross about it, and he gave it to what's called the Hall of Champions, which is was a sports museum at Challenge Stadium, out in Mount Claremont there, which is home to the Wildcats, or was for many years for people who are not from Perth. So they had that museum there. It fell into a state of disrepair, the museum, and basically everything it had ended up getting handballed to the WA Museum in Perth. So that's who owns that jumper.
The actually WA Museum owns that now.
The WA Museum, the State Museum, which is currently closed basically for the new building. So State Museum opens up again in November.
I would never have thought that they'd have footy stuff there. I don't know why.
They do, mate. They have some good stuff. They've got a Dean Laidley long sleeve. A long sleeve. I think it's a long sleeve yellow from about '88 or something. But they've also got some really nice old stuff that's been donated to them. So not heaps of stuff, but they do have some nice stuff in there, and also I've had quite a few discussions with the WA Museum about looking after stuff. So much like Andrew Bennett on the podcast you did with Andrew, talking about properly caring for him it was jumpers. I talked about various things, but jumpers being one of those. And I did ask them about some of the jumpers they had and how they looked after those when I was helping WA Football Commission recently to pack up at Subiaco Oval. So I'm on a committee for the Footy Commission, and we wanted to make sure we didn't leave things behind, which footy's really bad at doing in WA historically. And so I was lucky enough to have some discussions with the curators of their collections about things you can do to properly look after your wool, being my area. You can basically hang your sublimated jumper in a cupboard and nothing's ever going to eat it because it's basically plastic.
Okay, there you go.
So don't worry too much. I mean, that's probably not quite right. Something you have to be very, very hungry. It'd be like making me eat tofu, basically. So you're pretty safe if you hang those in your cupboard. But the wool jumpers, I mean, they're the favourite food of things like moth and silverfish and those sorts of things. So, but there are things you can do. And especially, and I'm happy to pass on some of these things, but especially one of the best things you can do when you get a new to your collection wool jumper is to make sure that it hasn't already got those pests in it, and you can't see them. So I don't think you can look at it and go, there's nothing on it, it's all right, I'll pop in the cupboard, because you could put that in the cupboard and infect the entire collection. So you might have 10 good jumpers in there and you put an 11th one in and the other 10 is stuff because it's got an infestation. So the best thing that you can do that I was told by the WA Museum was pop in the freezer.
In the freezer? In
the freezer. So literally fold your jumper up, put it in a plastic bag, and put it in the freezer. And I said, won't damage it. It's all safe. It's a natural fibre. Leave it in there for a month.
A month?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Like, you can leave it there for at least a couple of weeks, but leave it there for a month. Leave it there for 3 months. Doesn't matter. Get it out. Leave it out for a couple of days. Put it back in. Because some of the eggs apparently can almost, the eggs of things like silverfish and moss and that can apparently, almost survive the cold. But once they come out, they'll need to move and start hatching, and so you pop them back in then and give them a second dose. And that basically ensures you that your new jumper that's come from someone else's house where you don't control the conditions and the pests is pest free and ready to go into storage with your other jumpers. And with moths and stuff, and I got a lot of paper around, with my footy budgets and all stuff, which really attracts the silverfish, and so I have everything stored in acid-free polypropylene sheets and all that sort of stuff to keep it all nice. My jumpers, I actually sourced polypropylene boxes, again acid-free boxes with silicone seals. So they're actually folded only one way, in half, and if it's across a logo, I'll fold it so it's not across a logo. I don't want to fold the logo. And I put that into the polypropylene boxes and then snap the tops over, and that's airtight. So really big on making sure, especially some of that old 1940s and 50s wool stays nice.
So you've frozen a few of your jumpers?
I have. I got one in the freezer at the moment. I got a Subiaco jumper from the early 70s and popped in the freezer. While I was there, I forgot I had a jumper in the freezer that had been there probably 6 months, and the freezer needed defrosting, and I couldn't get it out, so I had to defrost the freezer to get the jumper out. No, it sounds weird, doesn't it?
It sounds so good.
And that was actually a big V from the 50s.
Yeah, right.
That someone had given me from the days when you swap jumpers, and it was a West Australian player who'd swapped jumper, got a big V, wore it to training as they always did, and because it's too hot over here, they cut the sleeves off. So it's actually a long sleeve big V with no sleeves on it, and it was that scratchy wool, and I'd pop that in the freezer to make sure that it didn't infest the rest of my collection.
That's brilliant. So if you walk into your house right now, open the freezer, there's a Subiaco jumper.
There's a Subiaco jumper in there, second shelf from the top, just in the back there, I think with the frozen curry from last week.
You haven't bought yourself a chest freezer so you can put them all in
That's
there?
the chest freezer.
It is a chest freezer. All right, gotcha. I'm assuming you have a partner, right?
I have a wife.
And what does she feel about that?
She's okay with that, mainly because she's too busy at the moment to know. She's back to uni and studying something really in-depth, so she's doing medicine.
Nice.
She's at uni about 12 hours a day. So
Jeez.
At the moment, my life's gone back to not getting so much nagging because she's not there to nag me. So all my footy gear, which I cop a whole lot of grief over 99% of the time, is actually I'm getting away with a bit more now.
That's awesome. All right, so we'll move away from the Eagles jumpers now. I think we've covered them a fair bit, but we'll move into the state jumpers, which I know is a big passion for you. I know a lot of people out there would refer to them as state of origin, but however, they weren't always obviously known as state of origin jumpers.
Well, there was no such thing as state of origin. So state of origin was, I'm going to put this out there, state of origin was invented by a West Australian. Rugby then stole it and obviously made it their own in recent years because footy's become disinterested in it until this recent reinvention, which doesn't really excite me because WA is not involved, but it's an all-stars team. But anyway, state. When I started watching footy, state of origin football was at least as big as, if not bigger than, West Coast. Because while the state's now divided between purple and blue and gold, the state was all together against the Vics. So it was huge. In those sort of early mid-'80s, when we were at least as good as the Vics, and I think we probably went 1-for-1 with them, wins and losses. They were massive games. So that's a great memory from my childhood, and those jumpers from that era, the reverse Richmond. You might think of it as. In fact, Richmond wore it as an away as an away jumper at Subi Oval a couple of years ago, and I felt like I was watching state footy again. They were just great jumpers, and before 77 though, it was a state team, so it was actually the WAFL versus the VFL. And you'd find your Polly Farmers and Barry Cables playing for the VFL sometimes, and you'd find Victorians who'd come here, your Kevin Murrays, for instance, playing for the WAFL. So, but there's some great jumpers from that entire era of WA football. A lot of people don't know. Back in the 20s, we wore green with a gold swan. I've seen in real life. I've seen one of these jumpers from the 1920s. They're almost like a bag. They're straight up and down. There's no cut to them. But they're green with a black and gold swan, and they're cool jumpers. But post-war, we started with a gold jumper with a black swan. And we went from that to the jumper. The only one really that I'd say I'm missing. There's a couple of variations, but which is the black jumper with a gold oval with a black swan in it. That's what we wore at the carnival in '61 when WA was national champions for only the second time. So if anyone knows of one of those out there, give me a yell.
Definitely.
And then we went to gold with a black yoke and a little swan on the left breast. And then we started to move into well, for 1 year we wore gold with just the black yoke, and then we started to move into the gold with the black sash. And that's probably my favourite era, I guess. But there are some cool variations in that era too. So like the first game, 77, when we absolutely pumped the Vics. It was gold black sash with a WA birthmark on it, which is the map of WA on the sash. '79, it was WA's 150th anniversary since settlement, so they wore the sesquicentenary logo on the sash. In '85, it was the 100th anniversary of football in WA, so there was a 100 logo they wore again on the sash.
Yep.
So there was on the sash or on the breast, either way, on the jumper. So there's some cool little variations to find as well from that black sash.
Yeah. How many of them do you have in total?
State jumpers?
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. I have got my laptop here. I could look that up, but rather than slow you down, around 15 to 20.
Yeah,
in that sort of
nice
vicinity. So I've got a 77 State of Origin picked up recently.
Sweet.
Sorry, 70. They wore it 77, 78, and I don't yet know which it is.
Okay, so you're not sure who.
I haven't yet done the provenance work on that. There's
Gotcha.
no doubt it's a PI.
Yep.
From one of those games. It's either Robert Wiley 77 or Tony Bahagia 78.
Yeah, right.
So a good couple of players either way. I've got a 79 Grant Campbell, who was an East Perth player. I've got an 85, which is a Paul Harding.
Yep.
And actually I have another 85 of Steve Malaxos because the jumpers slightly differed between the game against SA and the game against Vic.
Yeah, right.
The numbers were different on the back.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why. They were, the numbers where instead of having a curve at the top of the two, it'll be kind of squared off.
Yep.
One has those on the back and one has the normal curve numbers on the back.
Yeah, interesting.
I don't know why.
Very weird.
Oh, man, there's lots of weird things around like that in the 80s. I was looking at a WAFL picture the other day, a team photo of East Perth from 1986. I'm looking at a bloke in the middle, I'm thinking, why does he look so different to the others? What is it? And then I realised, so it's 1986, right? And he's got the WAFL logo on his jumper is the only one in the entire photo that was used from 76 to 81.
Yeah, right.
So it's 5 years out of date.
Yeah.
They've got the updated sponsors logo on it, so it's not an old jumper lying around for the new sponsors logo on it. Everyone else has got the proper current state WAFL logo, and he's got a 76 to 81. It's just bizarre, and
bizarre, yeah.
Like I would rule that out as a legitimate PI.
Yeah, you would.
Based on looking at it, you go, someone's cobbled, something's dodgy, someone's sewn a new logo on it, but it's legit PI.
It's insane.
So there's some weird stuff goes on with old wool jumpers. Yeah.
What's the earliest state jumper you got?
I've got a 1950 match worn.
Nice.
Which was worn by a very little rover named Jeff Smith against South Melbourne. Yep. So in 1950, WA went to the Carnival in Queensland. And when we went to the Carnival and the best players went there, it was fairly common for a VFL club to visit.
Yeah.
And minus their state players who would have gone up to Queensland for the Carnival and play against WA second 18, so the next 18 basically. So South Melbourne came over and played against WA second 18. I think they went one win each.
Yeah, right.
From memory.
It's good effort.
And Jeff Smith, the player whose jumper I've got, I think he hit 3 goals in each game and was amongst the best players.
Lovely.
And that jumper's one of the few jumpers I've got framed.
Yep.
The only reason it's framed is because it has so many holes in it that if you hung it on a coat hanger, it might, with the weight over time, just kind of tear through.
Yeah, right.
So it's I don't like framing jumpers, but it's in a frame just to make sure that it's all kind of kept as good as possible.
Fair enough. How modern do you go with your state jumpers?
I've got what have I got? A 13 and a 14, I think.
Oh yeah.
And it becomes a bit of an issue again of how many you're going to have because now they're all sublimated.
Yeah.
But on the WA state jumpers, this isn't State of Origin, obviously, because we don't play that. This is just the WA versus the VFL or the SANFL.
Mm-hmm.
They actually print the year on them every year.
Yes.
So I'm going to chase one every year. Probably not. So they're not really changing the design. The sponsor might change because it's the major sponsor of the WAFL, whoever that is.
Yeah.
Sometimes they change the logo from year to year, even if it's the same sponsor, and so you get a different jumper and a year on it. So I know I've got a 2003, I know I've got a 2007. I had a 2012. I think I've got but there's no real difference.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'm going to go and chase every year. I am chasing every year in the wool.
Yeah.
where there's a variation. So in the early 90s they actually started printing the year on the State of Origin jumpers.
Yeah.
So I want those.
Okay.
There's only 3 or 4 of them, I think, where they printed the year on. So I want one of each of those.
Yeah, nice.
But I'm not going to be chasing them every year after 2000.
Fair enough. How many have you got of those already? There's mid 90s jumpers, mid earlys.
Oh yeah, good point. I think maybe 2.
Yep.
Again, I'd have that on my database, but I won't dig that up now. But yeah, I'm probably 1 short, maybe 2 short there. The other real hole in the collection, and again, I don't put it in the same category as that great jumper I want, the WA wore from 58 to 63 from memory, the black jumper, the wool. But the other hole is the black jumper they wore in the late 90s, the black with the yellow sort of waffle logo. I've got a retail, but I don't have a player issue from that era.
Yeah, okay.
I think they wore it in maybe 96 as well, maybe 95, 95.
Right,
I think I'm pretty sure Doug Slater's got one in his centenary collection.
Dean Laidley's, I believe.
Right, okay, there you go.
Yeah, good looking jumper. That's probably one of my favourites. But I agree with you. The sash, the black sash, was probably the best.
The sash is iconic. It's one of the best. In my opinion, it's one of the best jumpers.
Yeah,
forget WA or whatever. Just one of the best jumpers. I just love that jumper, and it's probably. Some of it's because I like the design, but some of it's also because that was such a big thing for me.
Yeah,
growing up, it's Tuesday afternoon often. You get a school trip there sometimes, which was awesome.
Yeah,
you get a school trip to the footy, and there were 3 games in 4 years there, State of Origin, where WA won by less than a goal against Vic at Subiaco Oval. Yeah. So they were pretty awesome.
Absolutely. Now thinking back, 07. West Coast wore that particular jumper as a heritage jumper. Yep. Do you have one?
I do. I've got a long sleeve.
Oh, wow.
Which is unusual.
Yeah.
But I got that from my brother. Because I wasn't buying West Coast modern PIs at the time. And I probably could have got a better player at some point, but it's okay.
Who'd you end up with?
I think it's a Matt Rosa from memory.
Okay. Yep. I've seen an Andrew Embley one as well, actually.
A long sleeve?
Yeah.
I have a feeling I've seen the Embley one out there as well.
I think that's the only 2 I've ever seen.
I'm not sure why. Yeah. So that's a cool jumper. I do like that jumper, and even the retail. You got no problem selling it if you got a retail of that lying around somewhere.
That's right. Yeah.
A couple of $100 for a retail.
Yeah.
$250 probably for a retail jumper to maybe $200. So, they're pretty popular. They've held their price pretty well.
Yeah, definitely. With state jumpers, do you have an end game? Is there something you'd like to finish up with, or this is it? I'm happy with my collection now.
Yeah. So the state jumpers, I want the major design. So that 60s, 58 to 63 wool, that late 90s, mid late 90s black jumper.
Yeah.
So all that would kind of complete the post-war different designs for me, unless I notice something else that's minor but major enough to make me want it. So sometimes when you do a bit more research, you go, oh, actually, that's a bit different. I'd better go and find one of those. But I think I'd be pretty right once I got that.
Yep.
So that's only 2 jumpers away from from being at the end. There's a couple of other weird jumpers that WA teams have worn. WA and SA played an exhibition game in Canada in 88.
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't really WA. It was actually almost the Subiaco League team with a couple of additions to it, because it was kind of organised directly with SA, not by the state but by the clubs.
Yep.
And WA wore a black jumper with a gold sash,
like
a Richmond jumper.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any of them out there. I can't say I've ever seen one, but nominally, I suppose that should be in my state collection to make it complete,
definitely,
and satisfy my OCD.
What about players? Is there a particular player that you would just have to have in your collection from state jumper wise?
Oh, okay, yeah, it's a really good question. I suppose like every collector everywhere, I'd love a Polly Farmer. It's interesting. I've never seen a Polly Farmer, a legit Polly Farmer jumper.
Really?
Is there one out there?
I've heard of one, and I actually had a guest on recently who says he has one.
Okay.
So, I'll have to he actually wants your opinion on it as well.
Yeah, okay.
So I will have to get him to send you some photos at least. He's got it locked away in a case.
Yep.
So, I'll have to get a hold of that for you. So,
well, I'm happy to help with that, and I've ruled out two in the last couple of years that were set to sell. So the one I mentioned earlier, the East Perth jumper, but also there was another jumper that was actually on show at the Australian Sports Museum from memory, and came with a certificate saying it was Polly Farmer's match-worn jumper from the Australian Sports Museum. Yep. And had a number on the back that Polly had never worn in a game, so it couldn't possibly have been Polly's match-worn jumper. Aside from, I don't know, he ripped a jumper and just grabbed someone else's or something, which he can never rule out. But I don't know how otherwise you would say it is a match-worn jumper. So, I've never seen another. I'd love to know if one exists somewhere, and if this is actually a Polly, it'd be really cool to see. And I'd certainly love to have a Polly, and it wouldn't worry me whether it was the gold with the black swan, or I suppose I'm looking for the black with the gold oval and the black swan in it from the 58 to 63. Hey, if someone's got one of those for Polly out there, give me a yell.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so definitely let us know if you've got any Pollys or have seen one or have seen any photos anywhere. Give us a shout out and we can have a look and see if we can pass along to Sean as well.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I mean, to be honest, probably going to have to take a second mortgage if I'm ever going to buy one. So I don't know if that's going to happen. But geez, I'd love to just see one. Yeah. Why is there not a Polly Farmer jumper out there? Like, the guy's one of the icons of the game. There's Barassi jumpers out there. Yeah. I know of a couple in WA, Barassi jumpers. I know of Nichols jumpers in WA. Mm-hmm. So you start talking the stars of the game. Where the hell's the Polly jumper?
Being a journalist, have you ever spoken to Polly?
I met Polly some years ago. Must have been 15, maybe 20 years ago now. And I have had the chance, obviously, to meet some of the best players in the game through that. I did some reporting for AFL.com a few years ago for 4 or 5 seasons, match day reporting, sort of 2012 to 16 or something around there, but also through various other things I do. I'm involved with West Perth Football Club, where I'm normally the club historian. As I said, I'm on the WA Footy Commission's Heritage Committee. Mm-hmm. So I do get, I go to the Sandover Medal every year. I go to the WA Football Hall of Fame night. When they hold those every second year, and they're great. There's Barry Cable and Ross Glendinning and I don't know, Ron Alexander, Graham Moss, all these blokes sitting down, and you get a chance to talk to them or hear stories from them when they're getting presented with something. That's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Ever had the opportunity to talk about any of them jumpers wise?
Occasionally, I did have that opportunity to talk to Ross Glendinning, and the first thing I want to know is, where's your lace up? And after that, I kind of forgot to ask any further questions. But I know there are a couple of Glendinning jumpers out there, West Coast jumpers, and I think I've seen a North one as well. So there are some Glendinnings around. I asked Ron Alexander about his jumpers. He's got nothing.
Yeah, right.
What he did tell me was interesting, though, because it confirmed a suspicion I had. He wore number 39 for West Coast.
Okay.
Never played for the club, but he was one of those coaches who liked to wear players' jumpers at training. So we like to be in a jumper.
Yep.
And 39 was unissued, so they gave him 39.
Yeah, right.
Which is great because I've got his training jumper, number cool. 39 training jumper, and I think, why no one was 39? Why have they got this? And then I started finding photos of him in 39. So I've got some photos from that West Side archive of him in 39.
That's really cool.
I've never asked Cabes. I suppose I should. Pretty decent, pretty handy footballer. And he has got quite a lot of stuff, and most of his stuff has been on show at Subiaco Oval over the last 20 years, and some of it's now at Optus Stadium.
Yeah, okay.
I suppose I've never really pressed jumper stuff with most of those guys.
Fair enough. Well, we're going to wind down here because we've been going for an hour and 38, and you do have to get back to your daughter.
At all.
So we'll wind it down a little bit, but I've got to ask the general questions. Obviously, the big one being your favourite jumpers in your collection. Give us your top 5 or 10.
I sent you a list earlier.
You did.
Can't remember it off the top of my head. Probably should have had a look at that before we came on air, but...
there you go, mate.
Thanks, mate. Good on you. Okay, so no particular order. I did already mention the 87 player issue, which is Steve Malaxos.
Yep.
Run through a couple of Eagles ones. The 90 that I wasn't convinced was real and did turn out to be real is a David Hart.
Nice. David Hart as well. That's just tremendous.
David Hart, great player. Started at West Perth, by the way, so I'm going to claim him. Fraser Gehrig's 96 pre-season away.
Yep. They still have the stitched eagle head?
Yeah. It's a beauty. It's a really nice jumper. It's big enough for me to wear, probably, because it is Fraser Gehrig. He's a large
freight
unit. Yeah. Okay, and then... And probably some waffle jumpers. I've got a John Jerovich.
Yeah.
Victorians might not know about Jero. I think he'll go into the Australian Football Hall of Fame in the next few years.
I'm surprised he isn't already, to be honest.
Yeah, so if you see that statue outside Fremantle Oval of someone taking a mark, that's John Jerovich on someone's shoulder. It's an iconic photo. Google it. Google John Jerovich. And
you'll get that. South Fremantle, right?
South Fremantle, yeah. And he was like, I suppose he was our version of Coleman, similar era.
Yeah,
standing on players' heads, freakish goal kicking ability. Thankfully didn't have see his demise like Coleman did way too young. He's still with us. So I've got a match worn from '63, which has been photo matched.
Beautiful.
Which was discovered in a bloke's shed, given to him by an East Fremantle footballer, and I can't work out how an East Fremantle footballer got a South Fremantle player's jumper, but anyway, there you go. I've got a 73 Subiaco Mike Fitzpatrick.
Yep.
So went on to play for Carlton.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got that 1945 East Fremantle jumper, which which is really plain and dull, but it's a 1945 PI. Like you're not picking those up any time soon. It's literally blue with white piping.
Yeah, right.
That's it. So light blue piping, dark royal blue with light blue piping. So it's a dull design, but geez, 1945. Okay, the Jeff Smith state jumper from 50 that I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
The 77 or 78 State of Origin, and I'll get round to doing the photo matching on that. The 79 Grant Campbell with the 150 logo. The 85s with the 100 logo, the state jumpers. And then I've got a really nice early 70s state jumper worn by Bill Dempsey, who's a bit of a hero of mine, being a West Perth player. 343 league games for the club, and I don't know, 15 or 20 state games as well. So came from Darwin, Indigenous player. 6'2" ruckman, as they were in those days, as opposed to 6'2", I don't know, ruck rover or wingman or something. They're probably at the top of my my list, I guess. They're all wool.
Yeah, fair enough.
As we've discussed, I like the wool. So they're probably closest to my heart.
Fair enough. All right, so tell everyone where they can find you. I know you said you've got a bit of social media following at the moment, but just tell everyone where you can be found.
Sure, I can be found everywhere. So in the football budget, if you're in WA, and my details are there, or Facebook, my page is WAFL Collectables, so you can certainly have a look at that. Where else am I at the moment? Probably nowhere else at the moment. Jeez, should be in more places. Always email me at blackswan@iinet.net.au. So that's the email address I put it in the budget as well.
That's a great email address.
Well, that's why we chose it.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on. I know we've been trying to do this for a few weeks now. We've managed to get there, even with our technical difficulties, but it seems to be going all right.
Let's hope so. Let's hope that's actually recorded and we're not back here next weekend.
It looks like it's going all right. Hour and 43 minutes worth of conversation, but it's been tremendous. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Really appreciate you driving all the way out here, and hopefully you get home safely to your daughter.
No worries. Thanks, Aaron.
All right, thanks a lot, man.
Cheers.
Appreciate it. So there we go, another very entertaining and insightful conversation. Thank you very much again to Sean for making a trip out here. It was wonderful to have you, and I'm sure all the listeners will agree that it was a great conversation and really enjoyed it. So thank you very much to Sean. For a few things that I mentioned in the episode that I was able to figure out after he left. The Guy McKenna hit that I was talking about, he took a massive shirt front, 1995, so it wasn't 96, it was 95 when they were wearing the navy blue jumper at home. And I do remember it vividly. I was sitting in Walpole, which is a few hours down south of Western Australia. It was against the Carlton Blues, as I said, and it was Earl Spalding that nearly decapitated him. So, huge hit, that one. I might put up a video on the page so you can all see that. But yeah, big hit, and I was very surprised that guy actually eventually got up, because that today would probably mean 6 weeks. Big hit, but I don't think he even got a free kick on the day. So, yeah, how things have changed. The other hit, now John Worsfold that I was talking about, I do remember it being against Brisbane. I cannot, however, find a video of it. So if anyone out there can find a video of John Worsfold either getting cleaned up or cleaning somebody up, I believe he may have actually ended his season with that. And I think it was very early on in the season, so it might have been 1996 round 2 when they played the Bears at the Gabba. At the Wacker. I thought it was the Gabba for some reason, but looking at records, it looks like they played at the Wacker that day. So if anyone has that video, or you can look it up for us or find it, chuck it on the page as well, because I want to see that as well, because I remember that being a gigantic hit, and yeah, he didn't get up from that one. So yeah, it'd be great to see that one again. As you can tell, yes, I am still a West Coast sympathiser, being a huge Freo fan, but loving West Coast back in the day. So if you do have any older West Coast Eagles jumpers that the big West Coast fans haven't got a hold of yet, let me know, because I wouldn't actually mind getting one of these older West Coast jumpers in the collection. I'm a big fan of John Worsfold and Jakovic and Peter Matera and the likes of those guys back in the day. So I would love to add one to my collection. And of course, as Sean mentioned, if anyone has a Polly Farmer jumper, please get a hold of us or just share it to the page, because we would really love to see one, whether it be state or whether it be Geelong, doesn't matter, East Perth even. Just chuck it up. We would love to see a Polly Farmer jumper out there. So yeah, if you've got one, let us know. And of course, we are just over a week away, or probably a week away now if you're listening to this on Friday, from the bushfire quotation marks State of Origin and quotation marks game. So yeah, I don't know how you feel about that, but either way, it is a great cause, and it will be no doubt a fantastic game. Some of the players, how they got a gig, I don't know. But yeah, obviously every team had to be represented. That's a new word. But obviously every team had to be represented, and some of the players weren't available. So there was some, interesting conversations obviously around the tables there. So will be a great game. I can't wait to watch it myself. Obviously I'll be doing so from my living room. And those of you who can get to the game, again, please go. It'd be great to get a sellout crowd, obviously, for the appeal itself, raising money, and of course for any opportunity of getting State of Origin actually up and running again. We need to sell it out and make it a big deal. So yeah, please do so. And of course on that, the jumpers are up for auction already. If you haven't already seen it, apologies if you're going to hear a click from my mouse here, but I'm going to shift over to the webpage. So officialmemorabilia.com.au has those jumpers up for auction already. And just do a couple more clicks, and I'm going to go back and have a look here. So the Big V jumpers and the All-Star jumpers are all up. Obviously, they do say match worn on them. Obviously, things are still scheduled to change, or subject to change. They may or may not play in the game. But there's some big numbers already on them. Patrick Dangerfield's, for instance, is up to $1,003 already. So that's without a ball being bounced. So I think his is the highest at the moment. But can imagine being a charity auction, and of course, once in a blue moon that this game actually happens, these jumpers will go pretty high. I am bidding on one myself. I'm bidding on Michael Walters' jumper, purely because I don't believe that I'm any chance whatsoever in getting a Nat 5. He's currently at 500, but I can imagine it will go for a ridiculous amount of money. So yeah, I'll give Michael Walters a crack, but I don't think I'm too much of a chance, as I think these jumpers will all go pretty high. But if you are out there with some cash to spend, then yeah, jump on there, because you might be able to pick up a great jumper. They're also selling off the match-worn balls as well, so, and heaps of other stuff too. Also goes to the bushfire appeal. So jump on there, have a look. You might score yourself a bargain, maybe not, but you might score yourself something good anyway that you can come home with and add to your collection. Okay, just a few things that I've seen on eBay this past month. Haven't seen anything on Gumtree, I don't believe, for the last month. So it's all going to be eBay sales. Adelaide Crows, number 39, a 2010 Showdown jumper, Will Young, and it was signed as well. They're great looking jumpers, got every player that's played in the Showdown, I believe, on the front. It looks tremendous. It sold for $177.50. Next up, we had a WA State jumper. Now, this was unbranded, unlabeled, no badges, no nothing. Had a number on the back, number 15. So, honestly, I have absolutely no idea if it even belonged to any particular game or any player. But it went for $148.50. And in comparison with that, I actually had Chris Phelan's underage state jumper, which was fully badged and had his number, and also his warm-up top from a few years after that. And I think I sold those for less than that. So, yeah, interesting to see that. But is what it is. Also, Michael Hurley's number 18 Pride training jumper. So I think these are great-looking jumpers. They wore these in training. They're very colourful. And it went for $69.88. So an absolute bargain there. Whoever got that, I think you'd be absolutely stoked. Signed by a Hurley on the back as well. Travis Boakes, number 1, Port Adelaide match-worn jumper. Couldn't tell you what season. Looks like a 2018 possibly. But that one went for $305. So not too bad, actually. Next one surprised me a little bit. A Carlton 2018 Patrick Kerr jumper. Now, I don't know who Patrick Kerr is, I'll be honest. But even still, anything Carlton Blues, especially in the later years or the last few years, generally goes quite high. So $140.50 was a little bit surprising. There was also a Josh Kennedy, Sydney Swans, that is, 2007 Indigenous jumper. Now, it's without a GPS pocket. Still player issue. Still looks great. Just didn't have the GPS pocket, and it didn't get sold at $110. It passed in, so yeah, a little bit surprising there. And I might have to hit up the owner of that and see if they've still got it, because I wouldn't actually mind that. It's quite a nice looking design as well. Don't know if you heard Milo there. 2019 West Coast Eagles Clash jumper. So not too many of the 2019 West Coast jumpers actually came out. A few of the players actually sold some of theirs off. They're actually the rookie listed players, or the players that didn't really get a look in sold their jumpers. So yeah, a bit interesting, but yeah, there's a few out there, but not too many. Great jumper. I do like the new Hungry Jacks logo, which is just the Hungry Jacks wording and not the awful red box around the burger. I believe next year they're possibly coming out with the old style burger logo. So that'll be great to see that. And this one went for $270. A 2019 Geelong Cats Mitch Duncan for $110. Daniel sold a... this is upsetting to say this because I missed out on the end of it and I'm annoyed at myself for missing it. A Matthew Spider-Burton 2000 North Melbourne Kangaroos jumper. So Nike's final season with the Kangaroos. Fantastic looking jumper. It's a long sleeve as well. Spider-Burton obviously played for Fremantle Dockers as well, so I was quite keen on picking this up, but stupid me, forgot the end of the auction and I missed out, and it went for a bargain. $122.22. So whoever picked that up, you've done very well there. Currently active, I don't know if anyone's seen it, but you've got about probably 14-15 hours probably from listening to this until the end of it. Is a 2018 Cyril Rioli player issue jumper. It's currently up for $150, so that's a home jumper, and it is signed on the front by Cyril as well. So jump on that, because our Cyril jumpers will be quite hard to get in future. And that, my friends, is pretty much it as far as noteworthy jumpers that I have seen on eBay goes anyway. Just a bit of housekeeping. If you've seen something online that you really wanted, unfortunately it has sold before you had the chance to message the seller, don't get abusive and start ranting and raving and going on about them stuffing you over or whatever, because it's just ridiculous. If you weren't quick enough to get on that jumper, then you've missed out. Simple as that. It's not up to the seller to make sure that you know that the jumper is available, especially if they don't know who you are. I mean, if you've never had any dealings with them at all in past, then how can you expect them to let them know that you have this jumper available, unless, of course, they're letting everybody else know, which is exactly what they've done. Just something I've seen today, and Yeah, it's just one of the silliest things I've seen. So, yeah, if you've missed out on a jumper, don't go and start abusing them because you didn't get to purchase it. It's just unfortunate that happens, but move on. You've missed out. Sorry about that. I've actually just seen a post put up on one of the pages. Just have to read out one of the comments because I think it's hilarious. You might have to read in between the lines a little bit here, but if you don't get it, I'm very sorry. It's just hilarious and I have to read it out. So Clint Johnson, g'day Clint. He was on episode 5, I believe. He's just written a comment. It says, "See, I would just, under, no illusions, tell them, straight up they are, ... Now again, you're going to have to really read through the lines in this one, but yeah, tremendous comment. Good job, Clint, and I'll be using that in future. Now, I was going to give up this part of the show. I was going to just stop doing it altogether, but people keep telling me that they like it for some reason. So I'll continue to tell you what I've got in or what I've got coming so you can keep up with my collection, I suppose. As mentioned during the interview, I picked up a 2004 Peel Thunder Colts jumper, which was worn by Guillermo Ochoa. Fantastic name. If you Google Guillermo Ochoa, you'll actually come up with a Mexican football player, and that's not him, obviously. But yeah, I actually get in contact with him, and I've offered him the jumper, and he was interested, but he hasn't got back to me, so I don't know if he is anymore. But so this jumper is actually from the 2004 Premiership winning Colts team. He didn't play in that game, so the jumper isn't match worn from that game, but it is signed by the entire 2004 Colts Premiership winning squad. So yeah, really nice jumper, really cool. I got a 2014 Sam Gray player issue Port Adelaide jumper from Dave. Thank you, Dave. Clint actually sold me a 2012 Toby Green ACT player issue, so I'm stoked to get back into the first season of the GWS Giants, one I'll be keeping around for a long, long time. I always just want to have one of the inaugural jumpers in the collection from all clubs, preferably, but especially the newer ones because they're a lot easier to get a hold of. And it's gorgeous, and having Toby Green obviously is great as well. So thank you very much to Clint for that. We organised a deal where he got something out of it very good that he wanted, and I obviously got something I wanted. Also picked up a 2018 Peel Thunderbirds player issue, so the women's team, and it looks red, but it's actually pink, so it's quite nice. I quite like the jumper. They were selling them on the Peel Thunder website for like $20, so there's no way I was passing up that. Now, because I cannot remember if I mentioned this in the previous episode, I'll bring it up again. Nathan Geeson organised a pair of Dale Kickett shorts for me that he found from a guy in Queensland, and he got them all sorted. I ended up charging me the same price that he paid for them, so I'm absolutely stoked to get them. I thank you very much again for those, Nathan. They are tremendous looking shorts. Fantastic thing, Marlo. Seriously. Fantastic thing about them is that they were worn in the 1995 season, which I actually have Dale's jumper as well from the 95 season. So to match those two up is absolutely gorgeous. And I do have them both on a mannequin, so it looks great in the lounge room. Thank you very much again, Nathan. They are tremendous. I absolutely love them. Picked up a 2012 long sleeve Michael Barlow Clash jumper. I've managed to get myself 2015 David Mundy match worn. I do believe I brought that up in the last episode, however, but anyway, moving on. And also got through the same sort of deal. I picked up a 2013 round 22 Wear White on the Night David Mundy jumper. That one came from Vita, so Vita is a long-time Freo supporter. I think you might even be a little bit of a Port Adelaide supporter, whether you know it or not. I reckon you are. But no, I really appreciate the trade deal. Thank you very much, Vita. You got something out of it you really wanted, and I definitely got something out of it that I wanted. Any David Mundy jumper that I don't have in the collection is a win every day of the week, so thank you very much for the trade. Also found in my collection that I completely forgot about, hadn't taken photos and then didn't put in my collection, a 2016 Michael Barlow Clash player issue jumper. So always good to find jumpers that you'd forgotten you had. Also picked up a 2013 Anthony Morabito Starlight player issue jumper. Thank you to Lockie Maloney for that one. It's actually the second time it has been in my collection. It is the very first time I've ever rebought a jumper that I have sold. So thank you for that. I'm obviously trying to plug holes of jumpers that I don't have in the collection, so I'm trying to get every design that's ever been made for Fremantle Dockers, and that is 95 jumpers actually. So I've got about 28 left to go. No, it is 93. So about 28 jumpers left to go. So if you have any Fremantle jumpers and I don't have them, I do actually have up the checklist on my Player Issue Podcast page. Check it out, and if you have some of the jumpers that I don't have, please hit me up. I'd love to do a deal with you and see if we can get some into my collection that I am needing. If I can finish it off and I can create a history museum for the Dockers, it'd be great. Also on that, I picked up 3 more Fremantle Dockers jumpers. Another one plugging the hole is a 2012 long sleeve home Hayden's. I'm not going to say his last name. Skleefs, I don't even know. Played for us. Well, he didn't actually play a game for us, but he was on the list for a while. But ended up playing for South Fremantle. Won a few medals. I can't remember the name of the best and fairest medal for the WAFL League, but he won a few times. So he, decent player, but he just couldn't crack through, and picked up his 2012 home long sleeve jumper. So another hole plugged, and I also picked up a couple more name round jumpers. So didn't have a hole. I now currently have 24 of the name round jumpers. Got Garrick Ibbotson and Jonathan Griffin. So another couple of great jumpers to add to the collection. Now a big shout out to Brennan Foley for those two. He worked out a great trade deal with me, which I really appreciate. He was very, very fair, to say the least. He got some jumpers out of it that I'm sure he'll enjoy, and I certainly got some jumpers out of it that I'll enjoy as well. That is it for what I've got coming in now. It has been somewhat of a dry period, even though it doesn't maybe sound like it, but yeah. So anyway, that is going to do it for today's episode. It's been a long one. It's probably about 2 hours from start to finish. So thank you all for hanging around. I really appreciate it, and probably give it another 3 or 4 weeks until the next episode comes out. As Sean mentioned, if I do bring them out too quickly, we'll probably run out of content and people to talk to and things to talk about. So we don't want to overload it, and so give it 3 or 4 weeks and we'll bring out another episode. So hang in there, but please, of course, give me your feedback and jump on to wherever you listen. Give us a rate and review. 5-star review would be great. It doesn't really matter. If you love the show, then of course, give us a rate and review, and we'd love to see any reviews that you guys have for us, or of course any feedback. So as always, I wish you all the very best in your collecting adventures this week. That is going to do it for today's show. Ta-ta for now, and good night.